let me introduce to you, to the world, Chris Kehler.
I'm your host tonight, Chris Kehler, coming to you live from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, where it's not 109 degrees. And it's not raining cats and dogs and elephants either.
Yeah, really, seriously. I mean, we got big ones here, I'm telling you. Yeah, it's kind of nasty. We got these storms that are coming through. They're all coming up through the Caribbean. I'm glad they were not snowstorms.
Oh, you don't want a snowstorm. You do not want a snowstorm. That's just pure evil.
There'd be 6 feet of snow out here.
That's pure evil.
I'm serious. It's really bad.
Before we get into it, of course, this is the solstice. Lots of energy shifting happening. Lots of things are going on, and getting lots of questions about what's happening. Right now, it's kind of a low day. The shift happened. We went into the solstice, and things are just kind of waiting for an upswing of energy. But what I am finding since 2 weeks ago is lots of sugar and yeast. It seems to be all of a sudden coming up like crazy. And then, of course, all of the reptilian stuff, the DNA, the curses. Big one is, we call it the curse of Zeus. What I'm finding is the consciousness of the reptilian. So there's a collective consciousness. It is Zeus, and he's got curses and all kinds of stuff happening within humanity everywhere. They don't want us doing anything fun, these reptilians, let me tell you.
Now, everybody knows how I feel about reptilians. These guys are a pain in my backside, as Borat would say. Tonight's guest, let's bring him on. I want to get him on quickly because this is going to be one heck of a show. Len Kasten. Len Kasten has a BA degree from the Cornell University in Liberal Arts and an MFA degree from National University. He has been involved in UFO and ET-related research for over 30 years and is a former member of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon, the NICAP, and the Mutual UFO Network, the MUFON. He has written over 60 published articles for Atlantis Rising magazine in the U.S. and New Dawn magazine in Australia and New Zealand. His first book, The Secret History of Extraterrestrials, was published by Inner Traditions Bear in November 2010. His second book, Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, was published in 2013 of May and has been on the publisher's top 20 list for more than 2 years. His newest book, Alien World Order, The Reptilian Plan to Divide and Conquer the Human Race, published on February 25, 2017, has been greeted with wide interest and reached bestseller status in its first month. Len has been interviewed on Coast to Coast with George Norrie, Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, and tonight he is here on A Quantum View. Welcome.
Thanks, nice to be here.
Now, how did you get involved with researching something as silly as the reptilians and their agenda?
Well, it really, David Icke was the first one to capture my interest, and the more I looked into what Icke was talking about, the more convinced I became. However, I still wasn't really convinced because it was just a missing piece of my research. What put everything together was when I discovered Robert Morning's sky. That was the key.
Work that I do a lot of healing, and in my process, I do a lot of disconnect and altering of reptilian types of energies, removing reptilians from people's consciousness, and going into that whole concept of the reptilian and how they affect us in a health capacity.
My findings is that the reptilians were instrumental in designing us. I also find that at one point in time, some of us may have been reptilians and we chose to reincarnate on this timeline to experience ascension and to go through that. Now, another big thing I've been finding is that we live in a universe of parallels, and there are 7 different parallel Earths within this system. We, as we're speaking here right now, are on parallel 2. The reptilian world is parallel 3, and parallel 6. There seems to be a lot of hybridization going on in that world where there's half cyborg, half human kind of thing. And a lot of people are connecting to that parallel 6 through quantum entanglement, through astral traveling and coming back with some kind of illness, like going to Mexico and, picking up Montezuma's revenge, if you will.
Describe exactly what it is that you're researching and putting together for your new book.
Well, I couldn't quite comprehend how the reptilians got here, when they got here, who got here first, whose planet this was. All those pieces were missing, and I had them floating around in my brain, and I had to connect all those dots. And I rely heavily. Can you hear me okay?
Are we good, Bob?
Yeah, I got them loud and clear.
Okay. I rely heavily on intuition. And then when I read Robert Morning Sky, I realized that was the missing piece I was looking for, because we needed to understand where they came from. To say that they just came from Draco is not sufficient. I needed to know more about how they developed, where they developed, and why they were here. And when I discovered that they really think that this is their planet, and we are the interlopers, I had to look further into it, and I had to come to that conclusion, that we indeed are the interlopers. They were here first.
Through my intuition, my messaging through source, what I find is that there are parallel planets, where parallel 2 and parallel 3, where parallel 3 is reptilian, and they do have access to this planet. I find that we have a lot of their DNA within us, so they're affecting us in a lot of different ways. Does that resonate with you, parallel 2 and parallel 3?
Well, according to Alex Collier, they appeared in Draco and Orion out of the blue. He doesn't know where they actually originated. Just as the human race, what we know as the human race, originated out of the blue in the constellation Lyra. That's where the human race originated in this galaxy. So how they got there, full-blown, we don't know. But they were in the third dimension. They had third dimension capabilities as well as fourth dimensional. So whereas we are limited to the third dimension, they are not. They cover the lower fourth dimension, which we call the lower astral. I'm sure you're familiar with that if you're detaching their energies. So that's it. That's how they came to be. That's how we came to be. And we probably never would have bothered us if we hadn't clashed in that epic battle that took place in Lyra way back.
You're finding that Lyra is a big source of all of us.
Yes, exactly. And Lisa Royale talks about that, Barbara Marciniak, many others talk about that the human race in this galaxy originated in the constellation Lyra.
Interesting. You know what? I've really been hoping to hear some information from you, because I'm always on the quest for more information and more truth, so that we can certainly help people with a lot of these problems that are caused by this clash. You mentioned the name Alex Collier, and I've been doing a little bit of research on him, listening to some of his interviews. And he talks about the reptilians living underground, and they love to feast on children, and that there are tunnels and different types of avenues in order to feed these reptilians so that they don't come out from underground and start hunting down children. How much truth is there within Alex Collier's testimony?
I think Alex tells the truth as he knows it, and I think he knows a lot. I think he does have connections with Andromeda. I think he may truly be the Andromedan representative on this planet. I don't know. No, nobody else has claimed that title. And he, as you know, communicates with somebody called Tolek, who is his means of contacting his Andromedan friends. I think Alex has a big piece of the truth. Whether he has it all or not, I don't know.
This is one of the big questions that I keep asking, is there's so many people researching the reptilian concept, and everybody seems to have a different story, or let's say a different piece of the puzzle. Where do you find similarities?
Well, in putting it all together, I've been researching UFO information for 30 years now. In putting it all together, I realized there had to be an external cause for all the misery on this planet. That humans are basically decent. That's my I think so. So I knew it was coming from somewhere else. The brutality, the sheer brutality of World War I, World War II, the horrors. Those are not human characteristics, as far as I'm concerned. And so I needed to understand what was going on. And then when the reptilians enter the picture, it all becomes very, very clear, because they have no concept of mercy or helping, or they have no heart chakra. They're not evil. They just don't understand anything but domination. They're a different species, totally different species. So they don't worry about hurting us. It doesn't bother them whatsoever. They just do it because that's part of what they refer to as conquest. And they have conquered about 21 different star systems in this galaxy. And we're lined up to be number 22.
So in your research and your intuition, we are basically doomed?
No, not at all. And if you read my book and you read the last appendix in my book, I lay out the path to victory. There is a path to victory. And the information comes from another extraterrestrial, from a star system that was enslaved by the reptilians. So he's a refugee from Procyon. And he knows what he's talking about. And that appendix, I think, lays out what we have to do to combat a civilization that is so far ahead of us, technologically and every other way, interdimensionally, that it's going to be very difficult. But we have the ability to do it. We have the ability to do it.
And that is through our consciousness and our intent and our will and our soul's ability to manifest and cause things to happen in that respect.
Exactly. That's what we can do that they cannot do. We can reach into the third, into the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensions. They cannot do that. They are really, really imprisoned in the lower fourth dimension. We have the ability to go way up the scale because of the DNA that we were given when we were created. And that's our destiny. The Star Trek civilization is our destiny, but we have to take it. We have to take it. It's not going to be given to us.
How do you feel that the reptilians influence all these different religions?
Well, let me read to you something that one of the reptilians wrote. I'm going to read this in their exact words, okay? This is a website that I have access to. This is a reptilian woman speaking. She says, "First, my kind was, of course, seen and described and worshipped many times in your primitive past. For example, in your religious writings like your Christian Bible, you can find descriptions and even simple drawings of us, but also in the southern part of the American continent on various temples." I think she's talking there about Middle America. Mm-hmm. So-called wise men from India, from the Asian mountains have described our species many times in writings, together with other wise men from the African continent. I think you are the most mentioned non-human species. I think we are the most mentioned non-human species in your history. If you don't believe me, have a look at your history and you will see the truth in my words. You're great scientists, and she put great in quotes, called the belief in our superstition and religion, and today's intelligent humans have forgotten our presence on the surface in the past. So I think that wraps it up pretty well there. And yet also when you consider that even the symbol for the American Medical Association has the two snakes coiled around the staff, mm-hmm. And a lot of other things going on with the snake. The Garden of Eden story and many others.
Look at the pyramids of Egypt. There's the belt of Orion right there. The pyramids are designed to lock us into this 3D realm, this 3D matrix, so that the reptilians have at us to feed off of our energy, wars and brutality, as you said, and all these types of different things that go on at a very low level.
I'm not convinced that the reptilians built the pyramids. In fact, I believe the pyramids were built by the refugees from Atlantis, and they were very highly evolved humans, because all the humans on Atlantis were highly evolved. Actually, the human race on Atlantis was a different human race than the one we are now, because they really were what we would call pre-Adamic. So they did not have the reptilian brain as we do. And we can get into that discussion a little later if you'd like, but when we were created, that was part of the deal. That was part of the deal, that we would allow the new creation, the new humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, to incorporate the reptilian brain. And that's led to a lot of problems, but it's also made us a little tougher than we would normally have been.
The purpose of the reptilian brain, you've got the hippocampus, you've got the amygdala. What is the purpose of it?
Well, it's referred to as the fight or flight brain because it's the part of us that creates fear and the ability to react quickly to an emergency. However, the Atlanteans did not have the reptilian brain. They existed before we were created. So they were able to create a golden civilization 50,000 years ago, while Homo sapiens were just being created, actually. What we call the Garden of Eden did not really occur until about 40,000 years ago. And that was part of the deal between the 12 human civilizations in the Federation and the Reptilians. It was the agreement that came out of the Council of Hatona, the Andromedan galaxy. That's where that started.
That reptilian brain then would be a lot of cause of anxieties, depressions, fears. If it's heightened, it's going to cause a lot of different problems.
Yeah, the Elohim, who were the first human race to create us, agreed to that stipulation, because they were trying to create peace here on this planet between the Atlanteans and the Reptilians, who were at war constantly, because the Atlanteans were a fierce human race, and they had all the technology they needed to defeat the Reptilians. And eventually they did. But in order to bring peace here, the Council agreed to incorporate the reptilian brain, which would allow the Reptilians to influence us, but also the other 12 human civilizations who contributed their DNA to our creation created the higher brains.
Go back a little ways, back to the time of all of the giants on the planet, the Reptilians. What I'm finding within humans right now is a lot of bits and pieces of their DNA. Do the Reptilians come into play at all?
I think that Corey Good said that they would be considered pre-Adamic, and I believe they were pre-Adamic. Whether they were Atlantean or not, I don't know. But anything prior to 50,000 years ago was pre-Adamic, was before Adam, before the Garden of Eden. What we call the Garden of Eden.
And the Garden of Eden is a metaphor for what?
It was the agreed upon place where the new human race would be created in the Fertile Crescent in northern Afghanistan, in northern Iraq, and the agreement was between the Elohim, which were one of the top human races in this galaxy, and we consider them really godlike, and they were godlike, and the Reptilians. And the Reptilians, of course, are master geneticists. They go way back thousands of years. Their genetic capabilities go way back. Their scientists go way back, way before we even appeared on the scene.
Now, David Icke is sitting right here next to me, and he's shaking his head. He's going, wait a minute, what about the Archons? Where do these Archons come into play?
You know, I don't know anything about the Archons except they're supposed to be evil. They're a combination third dimension and fourth dimension. Is that correct? I'm not clear. I'm really not clear on who the Archons are.
I know David Icke talks a lot about them.
Yes, I know he does. And I think they are important, but I'm not sure how they fit into the overall scheme. They keep cropping up. Various people I've talked to keep talking about them, but I don't think they're certainly not human, and they're certainly not reptilian, and they're certainly not third dimensional. So what are they? I don't know.
I've got a few different thoughts on what they are. In the Middle East, they call them jinn, Arabic for genie. The story of Aladdin and his magic lamp comes to mind. One story I heard is that Lucifer flew into the North Pole, opened up a portal, and these things came out like flies and bees. And Lucifer then said, okay, these guys are in charge, so I guess they're in charge. And then they took control over the Reptilians. The Reptilians did their dirty work, etc. I mean, I asked a question about how many different stories there are regarding all of the extraterrestrial races, and also particularly the Reptilians having control over us. You really got to learn to discern what stories are stories and what is actual truth.
Well, we know that the Reptilians inhabit the fourth dimension. They have that advantage over us. That's why they can program humans in the dreamscape while we're asleep. That's why they can influence so many people to go kill somebody else, because they control the lower astral. That's my understanding. We cannot do that. Therefore, we get programmed very easily, and we get hypnotized, and we get manipulated. So maybe the Archons are really the fourth dimensional Reptilians, or maybe they're the fallen angels. I don't know. I don't know who they are.
Yeah, I wanna throw something out to both of you guys. Today, all right, not today, but I mean today in our time that we live in our timeline right now, we have a bunch of people who would much rather, and they may be reptilians, I'm not sure, but they want to take the internet and turn off the world. These guys, what they have the ability to do is they can actually turn off water. They can turn off power. They can turn off medical equipment. They can even cause a heart attack if a guy has a pacemaker. These things, I think, the war, that's coming. I don't think it's going to be the big boom. But the idea of this is if they turn off the internet, then they don't have the way to attack.
Reptilians are a mainstay. Their witchcraft abilities are a very big part of what I see. It does come a lot within our dream self, our sleep self. When we're sleeping, we're wide open. And if we astral travel and start to bump into them, oops, sorry, I bumped into you, well, then you're going to wake up with more than just having to go to the bathroom.
But you see, the human race was created by the agreement at the Council of Atona. The spirits that inhabit the physical human body are very, 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 very advanced. Alex Collier refers to the human spirit as the patal. But we come from another place entirely, and we have the ability to go way up into the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh dimension, even above. The reptilians cannot do that. That's our advantage, and that's why all we really need to do to beat them is to raise our consciousness. That's all really that's necessary. If we can do that, if the 100th monkey phenomenon can take over on this planet and spread, and we can raise human consciousness planetary-wide, the reptilians are going to go away. They have to. They'll have no further control over us.
Again, is all part and parcel with knowing how we're connected here and how we can raise that consciousness. And I think a big thing is awareness, and books like what you're doing and the talks that you're doing are a big way of raising that consciousness. For a lot of people, it's proof in the pudding. Well, how come I never see one of these things? Then a lot of people talk about famous people shape-shifting. Last story I heard is Adele, in front of a bunch of fans, shape-shifted into an 8-foot reptilian. The shape-shifting, is this a reality?
No, I think it's a reality. I think David Icke was very right about that. I think that when the reptilians started creating hybrids, which they've been doing now for many, many years, we now call them the Illuminati. The Illuminati are really reptilian hybrids. According to what I've been told, if the percentage of reptilian blood hits 45% or above, they have the ability to shapeshift. And that's what we used to call them the blue bloods. And the reason for that is because reptilian blood has a much higher percentage of copper and appears blue. So that tells us that all the royalty of Europe were really reptilian hybrids, basically. And once they have that ability, they can shapeshift. And also they can create holograms mentally to the observer, so the observer is not seeing what he thinks he's seeing. They have that ability too. That's a form of hypnosis. They can do that too. And of course they operate through the dreamscape as well.
Okay, so we got a question that came in. Does this mean that the elites that are controlling the governments are reptilians?
They are the ones we call the Illuminati. They are the ones that control the governments, they control the banks, they control the media, they control the military, they control it all. They have a blanket over this planet, and basically they carry out the work of the reptilians because they are part reptilians themselves.
This is all done through psychic techniques and witchcraft and imposing their will on us.
Exactly, and through money, of course. They always install a central banking system wherever they go, because through central banking they can reward their friends and punish their enemies very easily, and so they rely on that. And I refer to that in my book. I have a lot of information about that in my book in the first 2 or 3 chapters.
So this would mean the Rothschilds are definitely a big part of that conglomeration.
I would say so.
And what do you think about the Royals? Do you think she'll ever die?
I don't know. Her mother lived to 100. Her mother lived to 101.
That's reptilian longevity for you.
There you go. Well, of course, they had that drug. Now, in my book, I talk about the fact that the Queens of Orion had her scientists create a drug that could extend life into the thousands of years. And I think the reptilians still have that capability, and so they can live much longer. They can live through 3, 4, maybe even 5 human generations. That's how they can carry out a continuous program. Because humans come and go and die, they can live up to 1,000 years and maybe longer.
So within our DNA is programming that keeps us down to, let's say, 80 to 100 years.
Yeah, that was all developed by the scientists from the reptilian home planet, by the Queens of Orion. And I get into that. And all that information comes from Robert Morningsky.
A lot of the research I'm doing involves working within the telomere system of the DNA and creating higher energies within it for it to return back to a normal state, and so it can stay there. I mean, when our bodies break down, when you get older and your vision gets worse, your hearing gets worse, and you start to deteriorate, that's the telomeres in the DNA starting to decompose and shorten. So what I'm doing is looking to try and find a way to get these telomeres to grow again. There's an enzyme called reverse transcriptase that is very instrumental with that. So we're doing some research. We're trying to fight back a little bit as much as we can without getting our heads cut off.
Well, that's very interesting, Chris, because I've been told that the two advanced technologies that they're not giving us are anti-aging and anti-gravity. They have both. We have both. And I'm sure the anti-aging technology must tie into what you're doing. And if you could get a grip on that, think of what that would mean. I mean, all the illnesses of old age, all the problems of old age, all of that would go away. All that would go away.
That's exactly it. So what I've been doing is going into the astral and taking the DNA and the telomeres. All I got to do is say the word true. Astral telomeres true. And that's going to bring it back to, let's say, a human programming connected with a new human template, which is absent of any of these influential types of species within us. So move it into a higher vibration. It's going to help it to grow and regenerate.
Now, is that part of? So are you in agreement with this concept that we have 12 strands of DNA and we're only using 2? Do you agree with that? That seems to be what everybody believes.
Well, I'm kind of on the fence with it. One of the people I work with, his name is Wayne Gatos. He is an earth grid engineer, and his job is to run energy into the earth grid to help clear it for the ascension process. And we had a good conversation about the 12 strand. He's on the theory that we don't need 12 strands, that we have sufficient DNA in 2 strands, and to go 12 strand could be, let's say, causing some mutations. We don't know what it's going to do because we've never been there before. So right now, where it stands, 2 strands is perfectly fine.
I think since there were 12 human races that were involved in our original DNA, according to what I've been learning from Morningsky, I get the feeling that each one of the human races contributed one of the strands, and that's how we got 12 strands to begin with. But I mean, are you saying that we will not need that additional DNA in order to go through the ascension process? Is that what you're saying?
Far I haven't got it. I think once we get into area of ascension, then the is going to, and that could happen. People, and this is a warning to a lot of people, are playing with energy, and they're buying programs on the internet that say that these programs will activate your 12-strand DNA, activate your crystalline mechanism and all of that. I would certainly avoid against it because it can backfire on you in certain ways. It could cause some backlash within you that you may not want to be part of. So beware of people selling $12,000 programs to activate 12-strand. It's just not going to happen.
But is it true that we will take on a crystalline body?
One of the things that I do see is that we need more silica. the nutrient silica, and that's within diatomaceous earth, and different plants have got high levels of silica. The buildup of silica in our body could certainly transmute into a crystalline body.
Well, that silica could be supplied with cyborgian pieces, parts of the new alien cyborg that they're talking about creating, part human and part computer, because there's a lot of silica in computer technology. So I'm wondering if there's a connection there at all.
These are still things that are open for discussion and haven't really come about yet. When I need to know something, that's when it comes into me. And basically every week I get different variations of pre-clearings and different variations of knowledge that I need to go to the next step for humanity. So right now, the crystalline thing is still up in the air. The 12-strand thing is still up in the air. You got to remember that the ascension that we're going to go through has never happened before. So we don't know how it's going to react with us. We don't know what's going to happen within us. So everything could be on an etheric level for the crystalline body and the 12-strand DNA. If it's within a physical, organic level, that could cause a lot of shock and trauma within our bodies when it happens. Well,
is it true that the ascension process is going to bring us to the fourth dimension without having to go through death? Is that essentially what we're talking about here?
What I'm seeing right now is the 33rd dimension. Past all those lower dimensions, go up into the 33rd. The number 33 has a lot of numerology stuff to it, a lot of high vibration. So what I keep getting is 33rd dimension. And when you talk about dimensions, I mean, we're just talking about levels of energy, different levels of consciousness for the most part. That concept is basically just a higher level of consciousness breaking away from this whole Draco reptilian reality that's holding us down so that they can feed off of us.
Isn't it true that the dead people inhabit the fourth dimension? Is that a true statement? That when somebody dies, they simply pass into the fourth dimension and drop off this physical body because they don't need it anymore?
It is a dimensional shift for sure. I mean, people who are psychic can certainly talk with them and get information, and I do that on a daily basis, but of course we can't see them. Just like the reptilians vibrate at a frequency where we can't see them. I have seen one once. He was looking at me. He was straight on in my face. I was half in between sleep and awake, and this guy's eyes were going back and forth, looking in my head, seeing what the heck is in this guy's soul. And I looked at him, said boo, and he took off really fast.
What did he look like? What did he look like?
Green and yellow, slitty eyes. He had scales on him. His face was right next to mine, so all I saw was his eyes and a bit of his face. But his eyes were shifting back and forth as to say, what's in this guy? I need to find out.
Oh, they were really checking you out, huh?
They were in a big way. I've had them come in through my dowsing and say, hi, Chris, we are the Reptilians. Can we have a look in your soul? And I tell them to get the F out of my office because you're not allowed here in the first place. Who let you in? And secondly, they want to trick you. They want to try and get into your soul and get a hold of it so that now it belongs to them and they can either use it on the open market in the universe or possibly benefit from some of its attributes.
Exactly. And in my research, reading Robert Morning's Sky, I found out that in the early stages of the reptilian civilizations, their scientists had learned how to extract the consciousness from a body and put it into another body. They had learned how to clone, first of all, way back, and they had learned how to create a way to reanimate the bodies and automatically, and then to also the crowning discovery of the reptilian scientists was to learn how to transfer the soul or the consciousness from one body to another. And the queens of Orion utilized that technology, and they began to think that she was immortal.
A reincarnation or the recycling of the soul back into their draconian system, right?
Exactly, yeah. Is that what's happening to us when we reincarnate?
The concept has always been, when you die, don't go into the light. It's a reptilian trap.
That's what I've been hearing. Exactly.
What I find a lot of is they're using something called a white light weapon against us. And this weapon it's not so much like a gun shooting at you. It's much more like an energy. And the target is on the atlas of the brain, right at the bottom of the brain where the brainstem meets. And this will put thoughts, this will put energies, this will do whatever they want it to do, whatever they program it to do. If they have reincarnated and reinstalled your soul, now you are their property. So exactly. they can yes. control you however they want.
So anybody who reincarnates is subject to that device. Is that true?
And that's exactly it. One question I do have when I'm working with somebody is their soul reptilian or is their soul human source? And very often it's a reptilian soul that's been reused, re-put back into the system. And then I got to make adjustments energetically to, let's say, unplug the soul from the reptilian source and then plug it into the human soul source. And that right there and then, it all of a sudden starts to make changes within the person, and the healing can start to begin.
That's fascinating. Well, what about these hybrids? What sort of a soul inhabits a hybrid body?
The hybrid is going to be reptilian, for sure.
That's what I thought, yeah. Yeah, that's the information I got also. In other words, the reptilian body cannot accommodate a human soul. So if we're dealing with hybrids, we're dealing with aliens, essentially.
Yeah, they have to have the right mechanisms in place. So they have to have a human body, a physical body, to put their soul in, the reincarnated soul, so that they control it.
Exactly. That's incredible. So really, reincarnation is a trap. It's just a trap to keep recycling us back to continue to do work for them, right?
Reincarnation is a trap. Now, I've been getting some messages that the white light is now okay to go into. I'm still on the fence with that one. Not exactly sure. Question is, if I die, my soul goes up to the pearly gates. Do I go into the white light? Do I do a 180 turn and go the other way? Where do you go? And of course, we're not going to find out until we get there.
Well, where are our friends and family waiting for us, supposedly? Are they waiting for us in the white light?
I think they could be reincarnated on the planet here, and they're not around anywhere.
The traditional stories are that our family will be waiting for us when we get there. Our deceased relatives will be there waiting for us.
Well, I know I did have a conversation with my grandfather who died when I was about 2 years old, and through that conversation came something that only certain people would know, and I didn't ask anything about it. So there is validation with talking with the spirit and getting information. Didn't ask where he was. I asked how his afterlife was. He says, my afterlife is very fine, thank you. And he said, by the way, I didn't burn the house down. And the story goes that he burned down the house so they can get the insurance money. And I never asked that question, or kind of forgot about that. The concept of who's up there and where are they, I think is still a little wide open. I think that once we get out of this 3D matrix and are able to move forward, we're going to get more information on it.
You know, I think a fertile subject of study should be memory, because since we know that the deceased do have all their memories intact about their previous life, and because they obviously haven't had it washed yet before they reincarnate, that means that memory has nothing to do with the human brain. It must be independent of the human brain. So if we're dealing with the afterlife people, we're dealing with entities that still have all their memories of their previous life intact. And they can remember what went on and who they knew. So the question is, what happens to that memory when we get reborn? They somehow wipe it clean.
They wipe it clean, yes.
Just like the CIA, right?
Yeah, Control Alt Delete. They put the flashy pen up and you got it. You've got no memory, right?
Is that right? It's that easy. It's that easy, huh?
I don't know, and I don't pretend to know. There's a lot of people talking about different probabilities of what happens when we die, and where does our soul go, and what happens to it. Does it go to the dry cleaners and we sit in a line for 50 hours until we get reassigned or something? I know I've talked to some clients who have passed away, and some of the things they said were quite interesting, to say the least. So there is definitely a process when we die, we're our soul, our spirit, and there's also something called the infinite now. Our timestamp of the infinite now is all part of it, where we carry a lot of memories and a lot of things that have gone on. So I think that there is definitely a process, whether it's all reptilian, whether it's you can either choose reptilian or the other one, whatever. When it happens to me, Len, I'll let you know, okay?
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate it. What experience do you have with opening portals to other dimensions? Have you ever been able to do that, or do you know people?
I've closed portals many times. If I want to open a portal, I can. I'm very careful about that because you don't want something else coming in, archons. So, if there's a portal present causing a problem, it's as easy as making the intent to close it. But, you make the intent to close it 100%, not 90%. So you do that. But on opening a portal, many people do it unknowingly or don't realize that when they're opening a portal that anything can come in and all of a sudden there's bats flying around all over their house or there's the entities all over the place. They don't realize what they're doing. Just like people who practice black magic.
Yeah.
There, people playing games. Oh, look what I saw on the internet. If you took somebody's picture and you burned black candles around it and stabbed it with a knife, you might kill them. Ha, ha, ha. Let's see if it works on Joey. People don't realize what they're really doing.
I know. Tremendous. Aleister Crowley was deeply involved with all of that. And a lot of his disciples are still hanging around.
The book, it's all about the reptilian agenda to overthrow the Earth. What can you tell us? What can we expect? What can we look for? How is this going to happen?
Well, first of all, there's going to be, according to the sources that I've found, there's going to have to be another war because depopulation is part of their goal. And they want to get the population down to a manageable number. World Wars I and II were a big step in that direction because they wiped out an entire generation, 50 million people, in just those two wars. So depopulation is the beginning of their plan. Then, of course, the artificial intelligence is the main part of it. As humans become more connected and cyborgian, in other words, as we become more half machine and half human, we will be more controllable because they can plug us into a centralized computer. They control us that way. So depopulation, artificial intelligence, then what's left of the human race that is spiritual, they'll be able to easily control and enslave. At that point, we'll simply be annexed to the alien empire, become number 22.
I think I'll be number 1. And so we are fighting this battle against that spiritually, everybody raising the vibration of our consciousness to fight. And that's really the best thing. Number 1 is education and acknowledgement that this does exist. You look at vaccinations, you look at the food system, all this stuff going on that's making us sick. It's really designed to lower our vibration.
Exactly. And of course, the movies and television and the media, all of that to keep us distracted, keep our consciousness low, make us dumb and dumber, because they know that once we start to raise our consciousness, they're finished. They know that. And their job is to keep it low and they put a blanket around this planet. And, well, we're not really a prison planet per se. We're very close to being a prison planet.
Now, these other species that were involved with the creation of this seeding of humanity, don't they have any say in what's going on here?
Okay. Have you heard of a book called The Allies of Humanity?
Yes.
It's all in that book. They talk about the fact that once we lose our freedom, it's all over. And their first goal is to keep us enslaved and take away our freedom. So the Allies of Humanity, they're observing. They're here to observe and to warn us. And I think that book is the key. If you can read that book about how to resist losing our freedom and remaining free and remaining independent, which all really began with the American Revolution, by the way, and people like Thomas Jefferson and John Locke. That's where it all began. I have all that in my book. If we can do that by raising our consciousness, then they will have no more control over us. That's the game. That's what we're up against here. That's what we're up against. It's all about mind control. The whole thing is about mind control.
So now if you look at terrorism and things that are going on in the United Kingdom is one step away from martial law, from telling everybody to stay in your house. With ISIS going on, all the terrorist attacks. So basically the terrorism is to create a scenario where they can have martial law and tell people to stay in their houses. They can't go out, they can't do anything.
Yeah, that's part of it. I came up with a different idea, by the way, which I put out there on my Facebook page. We don't have to stay in our houses. What we have to do is create a corps of vigilantes. We have to keep them armed and trained, and have them infiltrate all crowd venues. Have them there. Once we do that, once we get hundreds of thousands of vigilantes mixing with the crowds, these terrorists are not going to know who's a vigilante and who is not, especially if they're both genders, male and female. I think that's going to put a big damper on their activities. We have to arm them, and we have to put them in touch with the people that they need to be put in touch with. That's the next step, I think. The vigilante population.
That could be pretty messy.
It could be, but it's the only way to we can't have people running for cover every time one shows up with an axe or a knife. You know, the last crowd, at least they fought back. They threw things at them. They threw chairs at them, and we have to start fighting back. We can't just scatter to the wind every time they show up with a knife.
You're certainly right there, and my thoughts are, if somebody wants to come and try and blow me away, you better be able to run pretty fast, because I'm going to be all over you like white on rice. My concept is, a lot of people say, oh, just send them love, send them love. Well, they're not going to accept that love. It's just going to bounce off of them, because they're not possible.
They'll be contemptuous. They're contemptuous of love because they have no heart chakra to begin with.
Well, that's exactly it. The fine line is going to be to find that weak spot, and whether it's finding whoever is funding the terrorist, somebody like Edward Snowden or
the Illuminati. It's the Illuminati. They have the money.
Absolutely. The Illuminati is this, and this. For John Q. Public, who aren't awakened, who are just following things on the news, when you say it's the Illuminati and it's the Reptilians, they're going to say, okay, somebody's smoking too much wacky tobacco.
And I think Corey Good was the one who said, what we've discovered is, first they throw war at us, then they throw terrorism at us, and the next step is going to be aliens, an invasion by an alien invasion. That's next on their agenda, to keep us in fear and anxiety. And fear, they thrive on our fear. They literally they sop it up like a sponge. So if they can keep us fearful and anxious, they sort of drink that.
Now, do you think Donald Trump is a white knight, or is he just some kind of fluke that got in there by accident?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not even going to hazard a guess, but I will say this: it's been from what I've learned in my studies, nobody gets rich in America without their help. That's all I can say on this. That's all I can say on the subject at this point, because I don't really know who Donald Trump is or what he's all about. But if he got rich, and he got very rich, which he is, and he's getting richer every day, somewhere, somehow, there's got to be a connection there. That's all I can.
Got to be something.
Yeah.
My thoughts is, number one, he could either be not reptilian and have the funds to go forward with trying to making some changes, or he could have been brought in as a scapegoat to press the button. I mean, look at things going on in North Korea and China and Turkey and everywhere. There's so much going on, and I think everybody's got their hand over the button, waiting for the right time to make something happen, to create again this scenario of fear, of control.
And what I'm seeing with Donald Trump is that he seems to be moving in the direction of more and more authoritarian government. There's a very, very similarity to a lot of what happened in Germany in 1933. Very similar. Very similar. He's trying to do away with controls over his activities, and that's exactly what Hitler did with the enabling laws. So that's what worries me the most.
What do you know about Antarctica?
Well, I think that in my second book, The Secret Journey to Planet Zero, I talked about the fact that the Germans built their colony there in 1938. They sent scientists, they sent doctors, they sent a complete civilization under the ice in Antarctica in 1938. That was the year before they started World War II. So if they were able to devote all of those resources to starting a colony 5,000 miles away across the Atlantic, it must have been very important. And I already have speculated that they were being helped by the reptilians from the very beginning. So my belief is that there probably was a reptilian colony under the ice, and they had invited the Nazi regime to go there and to create a German colony there. And they're still there. And according to Vladimir Terziski, who you may have heard of, I don't know if you know who he is, there's a city there called New Berlin that he claims has about 2 million people.
What's the German name? New Schwabenland or something?
New Schwabenland, yeah, New Schwabenland.
Yeah. You got to figure, who the heck is going to question anybody at Antarctica? It's so darn cold that nobody's going to want to go to check it out. So just leave them, let them freeze. It's much like Winnipeg. That could be a reptilian entourage in Winnipeg. Nobody would know it.
It gets pretty cold. Gets pretty cold there, doesn't it?
It gets -40 in Winnipeg. Let me tell you.
Well, Buzz Aldrin came back from Antarctica very sick. Maybe they have a way of making people sick when they get there.
You know what? One day we may find out. How can people research you and find your books, Len?
More of my books are on Amazon. They're also available from the publisher, Inner Traditions. They'll be able to buy them from my website shortly. It's under construction right now. But either Barnes & Noble, Amazon, any bookstore actually, you should be able to find the books.
Interesting stuff. So, you know what I'm going to suggest, Len, is that you and I kind of keep in touch. Between you and I, we put our consciousness together. There could be something within it that could trigger something that could create some reality that's more beneficial for all of us.
Absolutely, Chris. I'd be very happy to do that because I've learned a lot already just in this 1 hour I've been talking to you. So I'm sure there's a lot more to learn from where that came from.
You know, you're definitely on the right track, and it's made some confirmations within my consciousness that yes, we're on the right track of things. There are people who like yourself, who are very well educated, and that's what I think people need to pay attention to. That very well educated people, not people wearing aluminum hats and walking around with signs saying the world is going to end. Just a novel, a story. This is something that's real.
Right. The key word is knowledge. The key word is definitely knowledge. There's no question about it. And also a synonym for consciousness, by the way, is awareness.
Yes.
If you can extend your awareness, basically you're extending your consciousness. They're one and the same thing. So becoming more and more aware of what's happening is very critical.
Yeah, it's called a paradigm shift. Instead of looking forward at the TV, you look left and say, what's down that rabbit hole?
There's a lot out there. There's a lot out there. I would recommend that everyone read that book, The Allies of Humanity, by the way, if they can get it. It's on the internet, because that covers a lot of this territory as well.
What was that book again? I think you broke up a bit.
The Allies of Humanity.
The Allies of Humanity is definitely a book that needs to be checked out. Also, check out Alien World Order from Len Kasten. Len, thank you so much for being on A Quantum View. It's been a pleasure, and I think we should definitely keep in touch, my friend.
Absolutely, Chris. It's been a pleasure for me, too. Nice talking with you.
Wonderful. This is Chris Kehler. We are out.